The cost of living crisis in the US and UK and several developed economies has shot several prices through the roof. But what is even more worrying is the fact that there are experts and analysts from JP Morgan projecting that from July 2026, we are going to pay even more in bills as a result of these 5 reasons that I'll be highlighting in this video. And so you might want to stick around and watch till the very end. And if you're new here, my name is Nana. I hold a master's degree in business finance. And on this channel, we discuss everything personal finance and personal development. And so without further ado, we come to the first reason why people are going to pay more in this year 2026. And that is simply because the Trump era tariffs are still raising prices. So if you'd recall, in 2025, the first quarter after President Trump had been sworn in November 2024, what he went on to do was to slap sweeping tariffs on allies in a bid to reverse what he called the trade canker, that is other nations or trading partners taking advantage economically of the trade with the United States. So one of the key things that he did was to slap tariffs on China, slap tariffs on the European Union, slap tariffs on Canada and several other world-leading economies around the globe. Now in retaliation, these nations also slapped tariffs on US imports, and that subsequently led to a global disruption in supply chains and all of that. But now, JP Morgan is projecting that between 40% and 90% of the costs that are arising from these tariffs would actually be borne by the average US household from July 2026. So holding all the factors constant, you're going to see between $670 and $1,430 in excess bills as a result of President Trump's sweeping tariffs on several other trading partners across the globe. That brings us to the second reason why the average household in the US is likely going to pay more in bills in this year 2026, and that is simply because the war in Iran is equally driving the price of goods and services up. So in 2026, on the 28th of February, the US and Israel launched a joint military attack on Iran, thereby taking out Iran's supreme leader. Now, in retaliation, Iran launched several horizontal military attacks on several US allies within the Middle East sub-region. It didn't just end there. Iran subsequently went on to block the Strait of Hormuz, which actually serves as a seaway or a passageway for the delivery and the supply of up to 20% of the world's global oil supply, and then also 1/5 of the world's global supply of fertilizer. So as it stands now, the general price of goods and services are being pushed up simply because the supply for oil is actually being falling below the demand for oil. And that has subsequently also led to several US allies going into their strategic oil reserves and then releasing several barrels. But the question is that enough to actually bring the prices down? The truth is, we still need the oil coming from Iran in order to restore the global oil supply and subsequently reverse the prices that are hiking at the pumps. And so with these 2 points mentioned and discussed, there's one thing that is subsequently going to follow that will lead to several millions of households in the US paying more in their bills, and that is inflation is going to go up. Now, inflation, for the avoidance of doubt, is a measure or the rate at which the prices of goods and services that we consume in an economy go up or fall over time. So holding all the factors constant, the food, your clothing, your gas and electric, the bills that you pay are likely going to see a rise simply because of all these global disruptions. And the truth about this inflation is that it's not only going to be limited to the oil or the fuel that you buy on a daily. It's going to transcend beyond the oil boundaries and then go into other sectors of the economy, like your healthcare, the services sector, several other things, including even supplies to hospitals and schools and all those basic stuff that we need to run the economy. So overall, you're likely going to see the price of general goods and services in the US going up, which means that the average household will now need more money to purchase more items as compared to initially where their purchasing power was strong prior to inflation going up. As at the time that I was recording this video, inflation in the US stood at 3.8%, and that is 1.8 percentage points above the Federal Reserve Bank's inflationary target of 2%. And so that will subsequently lead to a phenomenon where the central bank will be actually pushed to react in a bid to actually bring inflation down and then subsequently drive growth and development in the US economy. And so without further ado, we come to the fourth reason why you're likely going to pay more in bills in this year 2026. And that is simply because interest rates are likely going to go up. So the Federal Reserve Bank, which happens to be the central bank of the US, has one constitutional mandate, and that is to tame inflation and ensure economic growth and stability altogether. So in a bid to actually control or tame inflation, the central bank does one thing. It actually hikes interest rates, and interest rates actually affect the rate at which the commercial banks like the JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs borrow from the central bank, that is the Federal Reserve Bank. And then subsequently, that also affects the rate at which households and individuals and companies also get access to loans from these commercial banks. So in a bid to control money supply and to cut money supply altogether, thereby reducing inflation, what the central bank, which is the Federal Reserve Bank, does is it increases inflation. So you'd see the mortgage rates actually going up simply because the cost at which these commercial banks initially borrow from the central bank has gone up. So they also have to put something on there in a bid to make profit in their engagements. And that is why you're likely going to see your mortgage rates go up, your personal loans going up, your credit card loans going up, your car loans going up, simply because inflation must be tamed, and it must be done by the central bank, which is in this case the Federal Reserve Bank of the US. That brings us to the fifth and the last reason why you're likely going to pay more in bills in this year 2026, and that is simply because of global supply chain disruptions. So as it stands now, we've seen the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz that is thereby cutting nearly up to 20% of the world's oil supply. And as a result of this, if it persistently goes on and there's no deal in sight or any mediation process proves to be futile, then one thing that we are likely going to see is persistent increase in the price of everyday essentials that we consume on the daily. And that would subsequently come at an additional cost, because now citizens will be enraged, and governments will be pressured to come up with innovative ways, trade deals that are rushed, or they are likely going to enter into deals at a very disadvantaged position, which may also come up at an additional cost to the average taxpayer, thereby increasing the cost of living crisis altogether. And so let me know what your concerns are in the comment section, because in the UK, the issue is no different. As I sit here, I've seen a 71.7% increase in my gas and electric bills between February and now, since the war actually started in Iran. And so thank you for spending time with us, and see you in the next video.